all profit is value extraction. And that means that all profit is theft from you.
Corporate America is on welfare, and we got to get them off welfare.
The last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary, and you're gonna have to keep on saying that.
All right, we're starting.
Okay. Anyone want to intro the show?
Let's get ready to podcast.
All right. Well, it's Cars and Comrades, and my name is Bryant, and that first voice you heard is Brandon. How's it going?
Oh no, that was an announcer. That wasn't me.
Oh, okay.
I'm good.
Cool.
I'm not great. Everybody here knows why. It doesn't matter, but I'm fine.
Yeah. And there's also Connor. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing all right.
And Zach, what's up?
Not much. Doing okay. How are you, Bryant?
I am okay. So this week we're going to talk a little bit about some labor struggles in South Korea, aka Cringe Korea, aka the
American colony. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. The Republic of Korea, and how auto workers were involved with some of those struggles. It's a little bit off topic from the whole cars part.
No. Auto workers count. God damn it! Auto workers. It's in our wheelhouse. We interpret our wheelhouse very, very broadly. Everyone knows this. It's fine. We're good. Auto workers were protesting shit. We're good.
Yeah.
It started on topic and deviated, as we are wont to do.
Yeah.
Us deviate? No, never.
Do you remember that time we did an episode on fucking Sears?
Honestly, still one of my favorite episodes we've done.
It was a fun one, I thought.
It was.
I think I missed that one.
Oh, well, go back and listen.
Did. Yep.
That's your homework.
All right.
But speaking of being off topic, I think we should do some car updates. And I think, Zach, since you were gone last time, I think it's your turn.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. Damn, I don't remember where I was last time I updated. It's been too long.
Well, I know you told me that you were talking that you had a blown out strut and you were going to replace it with coilovers.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. It got too bad and my coilovers were taking too long. So I did end up replacing my blown out strut with just a OEM replacement that I got off of Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
And the guy was nice enough to give me another strut as well. He gave me two. So I don't know why. I don't need to, but he was like, do you want this other one? I was like, yeah, why not? I'll add it to the pile of parts that I have building up in my garage. That's fine. So yeah, my car is driving a lot better now. I think my fuel economy actually got better after I swapped it out, which is, I mean, it was pretty rough. Every little bump and dip in the road was like clattering my teeth together. So it was pretty blown. I think it was having a hard time getting over bumps and uphills because of it. But yeah, that's going well. I did order a new suspension for it. I ordered Flat Out GR Light, which is a gravel rally suspension. So I'm going to have 3 inches of lift and 3 extra inches of travel on my suspension once that comes in. So yeah, I decided to go up. I was really contemplating whether I wanted to go up with it or down and drop the car. And I decided I want to drive this thing on the street, and the streets are shit. So I'm going up. So yeah, hopefully that's
anyone been to a city in America where the streets weren't shit.
Yeah,
is that a thing?
No, never. I've never experienced it. I'm convinced that does not exist.
Yeah. I'm trying to think because like I've driven almost all over the entire country, and I don't think that it does exist in my experience.
Yeah.
Maybe
No.
places where it doesn't snow. I don't know.
Even then, I mean, I think the heat breaks and cracks the tarmac and
Yeah.
fucks it up. So, there's no way they're fixing that shit.
Yeah, I mean, I forget who said this, but America is a third world country in a Gucci belt.
Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah.
true.
Okay, so I know where the Bible Belt is. Where's the Gucci belt?
It's on the preacher of the Bible Belt. Got him. Shit, I was going to say something. Now I forgot. Yeah. I literally work in like one of the highest income areas of the city. It's literally like where all the biggest corporations and like the people with the most money live, and the roads there are fucking terrible. It makes no sense. I'm like, there's so much money in this like 5 square miles, and the roads are absolute dog shit. It makes no sense to me.
When I went to return that air compressor to you, what was it, a week or two ago?
Yeah.
I almost, and like there's like a 2 foot deep, like by 4 foot wide pothole just in the driveway of that business that you're working in.
Yeah, it's insane. It's the roads there are horrendous. But yeah, some of the most money in the entire state is concentrated in that area. So you'd think they'd at least make their roads nice, but I guess not. I guess the shitty infrastructure affects us all.
Yeah.
Sure does.
Yeah, I think back to car updates. I don't think I've updated since I got my last round of parts for my build. I recently purchased a not a fuel pump, sorry. Injectors, fuel pressure regulator, and a fuel filter. So whittling down the list of things that I need for my Subaru build, slowly but surely. I think the last big thing I really need is a turbo. And other than that, it's just little odds and ends here and there, some hoses, connectors, things like that. And then I actually talked to another guy that I bought some parts off of. Really cool guy. He actually races Subarus. He builds a lot of motors, and he's got a 900 horsepower capable motor, short block, sitting in his garage that he said he would trade my STI long block for. So about to get that. Once I can get the transportation squared away for those motors, I'll have that. And then I think I'm just going to redo my heads and leave stock heads on it. Just put some cams in it, have them redecked and all that. And then,
Do you need cams for this build? Is that going to really help it?
Yeah, it should definitely help, especially shooting for top end power.
Okay.
I'm going with a stock location, stock inlet size turbo. So they say that like a mild cam is probably best for this setup. That's kind of how that turbo is going to breathe most efficiently. So I'm not going to go with like a crazy like V8 chop cam, but I'm going to go with, just a mild cam over stock just to help it with that top end power. Because that's one thing that I really want to focus on this build is not creating turbo lag as much as I possibly can. I want it to be as close to stock power band as I can, just bigger.
Is there anything special with the turbo that's going to help it spool quicker, or
just being stock location and stock inlet size so it's not rotated will help a lot with that. So it's, forcing that air in there a lot faster than like a huge inlet size turbo that takes a lot of time to suck all that air in. It's going to push it a lot quicker.
Okay.
Power. Being that it's stock inlet size won't take all day to spool.
That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. And the turbo that I'm looking at getting has been dyno proven over 600 wheel horsepower on ethanol. So that's kind of what I'm targeting. I might not go ethanol right away. I might just go pump gas for the time being. And I should be able to get around the 450 range with that, which I think will be a nice little bump in power. And then once I get used to that or bored of it, I can swap over to an ethanol setup and everything that I have bought so far should support ethanol. So
Yeah.
I'll start targeting closer to the 600 range. I think if I could get mid 500s, I'd be pretty happy. I think I'm going to be really happy with like 450. I think that's going to be an absolute rocket on the street.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 450, like 450 will be scary for a while until it's not, and then you'll need more, of course. But yeah, that's a lot. That's no joke. So
yeah, I'm at a little over 300 wheel now, and I've gotten used to it at this point. But that was a little sketchy there for a minute there. Like before I got used to having 300 wheel horsepower, I was a little scared to really get on it. But it's an all-wheel drive car, so it helps a little bit. I'm not throwing the back end around too much. I'm just hitting 80 miles an hour very, very quickly.
You're not having torque steer on the on-ramps?
Yeah, no, definitely not. I do need to install my DC CD controller, the center differential controller, because right now it's just in like maximum rear wheel drive mode all the time. And it's been rainy a lot of days this summer. It's been rainy here in Denver. And I've been sliding corners a little more than I'd like to. Caught me off guard a couple times. I thought I was going to hit a curb once, but I kept it together, kept it straight. So,
quick side tangent. When I had my Miata, it had the Torsen style LSD, and I definitely fishtailed it around a couple corners in the wet or in the snow or whatnot. It was pretty easy to do that.
Oh yeah, that's always a good time.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much my car update. Oh no, I am selling the Audi officially. Got it on the market. Had somebody come and check it out. Yeah, it was going really well. I drove it about 30 miles down south to meet the guy, and it went really well. I ran out of gas on the way there. But other than that, was going really well. Parked it in the parking lot. The guy showed up. He turned it on to check it out, and he goes, "Hey, do you know what this check engine light is about?" And I said, "No, there's a fucking check engine light. Are you kidding me?" And so we drove it to Advanced Auto Parts, and it's a timing over advance on intake cam bank 1. So I've got it in the shop right now, trying to figure out what that could be. Hopefully it's nothing too serious and I can get this thing sold, or maybe just clear the code and sell it to somebody.
Right.
With the code cleared, and let it be their problem. I'm so fucking over this car. But as soon as I get it sold, I think I'm going to buy a first-gen Toyota Tundra with the 4.6 liter or 4.7 liter V8.
Okay.
I found a few in my price range that are pretty decent, little higher mileage, pushing like the 200,000 mark. But from what I can tell, those trucks should be perfectly good out to 300,000 if they're well taken.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing. I don't care what I don't give a shit about the reputation. When I see over 200,000 miles and the prices they ask for these trucks, I'm like, no, you gotta lower it. It's 200,000 miles. That's a lot. I don't give a shit how reliable it is. That's a lot, no matter what.
Oh yeah, they're all going for like 10 to 15 grand with like 200 to 240,000 miles.
No, that's crazy.
Insane.
That's nuts. No, not allowed. Again, that's too much. I get that they have a reputation. Oh, they can go another 100,000, but I'm like, yo, that last 100,000 miles is not pretty. I don't think, right? I mean, that's a lot of repairs and a lot of leaks and a lot of fucking engine lights and shit.
Oh yeah, there's some people that are a little more reasonable and like the $10,000 to $12,000 range with like 150K. That's what I'm really looking for. But yeah, the way the truck market is right now, they're selling faster. So
it's been that way for fucking 10 or 12 years, where I've been like looking for like, oh, maybe I'd get a truck or something that like could at least in theory tow my race car, and it's just like, nope, I'll drive the race car to the track apparently to the day I die, because I'm never going to afford one of these goddamn trucks with what they ask for them things. 200,000 miles on all of them. I don't give, no matter what brand. It's like, oh, it's like 250,000 miles. I want $11,000, and I'm like, no, fuck you. You're out of your mind.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, I'm just
very necessary rant. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I think the Tundras just fetch a premium too because they have that reputation of being reliable. and, you know, can go 400,000 miles and all that. And yeah, it's obscene. But yeah, I've been looking at those. I've also been looking at earlier F-150s, just something like that, you know, like that size pickup, something a little bigger than a Tacoma. Because yeah, I had the same thought as you. If I start modifying my Subaru, I want to be able to tow it around, because I don't want to have to drive a 600 wheel horsepower car to events and things.
Yeah.
You know, that's not always fun, actually. It can get a little overwhelming when you're driving something like that on the street all the time.
Okay, here's what you do. Get a Lexus LS400 and a Sawzall.
No.
I already have the Sawzall. I'm in. Give me the rest of the plan. What do we do here?
Get the bed off the Ranger and just weld that shit on there.
I love it.
I'm back in.
It's a great plan.
But yeah, I mean, that's basically the same engine as what's in the Lexus, but with an iron block and a little bit bigger displacement. And those Lexus motors, at least one of them is run for 1 million miles. So
wow.
Like, if anything, the iron block version should be more durable, but yeah. I don't know. What I'm saying is you should put a big turbo on it also.
I never ask how many miles a Lexus has on it. I just ask how many blinks its turn signal has on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Lexus terms, it's going to be under 100 for most of them.
Dozens
of blinks. Hey, you'll never have to replace a blinker on it because they never get used.
Dozens of blinks and never once during a turn.
They accidentally bumped it and turned it on once, and they had to take it to the shop to figure out what the problem was. Like, half of my flashers are on? I don't really understand what's going on here. Could you fix this for me?
Honestly, when I'm drifting, I wind up like finishing a run a lot of the time, and I'll like just like have my turn signal on, or my windshield wipers will go on when I'm drifting. It happens all the time. It's so funny.
It would actually be a pretty sweet flex if you could turn the blinker on for every turn that you drift, and like it was blinking the correct direction, you know?
That would be cool. Although I don't know,
somebody made a custom turn signal switch for my van, and it's like twisted iron. It's like really big and heavy, and if you have your turn signal on and turn your wheel the opposite direction really fast, it'll click off hard enough to throw it into the opposite position.
Nice.
So I often have my turn signal on that I did not put on, just driving down the road.
Very cool.
It makes me feel rich.
Yeah, as it should.
That's the closest I get to acting like a rich person.
Yeah, sometimes I change lanes without putting my blinker on, and I'm like, wow, fancy. I feel so high class right now. It's almost like I'm in a BMW.
Sometimes I change lanes into a Tesla just so that it has to slam on its brakes.
No joke, I do that all the time. If I see a Tesla, I'm like, you're getting cut off. It's fun. It's a good time for everyone.
Except for the idiot who bought a Tesla.
Yeah, but I mean, fuck them.
Yeah, he was already having a bad day anyway.
Yeah, he has to drive a Tesla. I mean, he's not having a good day.
So anyway, I'm sorry, Zach, you drove the car you were selling to the buyer or the potential buyer?
I did.
Crazy. What? That's a buyer's market right there. What the fuck?
For that car, it really is. I mean, they're hard to sell. And to be fair, he was coming from like an hour south, so he met me halfway.
That's fair then. That's fair.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I've done that before.
That's fair.
We met up halfway in between. So
okay, that's not so bad.
It's reasonable. I'm not going to go driving, traipsing all over the world for somebody to buy it, but I'll meet you halfway.
You think so? Do you think so? It's in the shop now. Do you think this person might still be interested in buying it?
Yeah, they actually said that if I got the check engine light figured out, that they would pay my agreed upon price. Which I was asking $7,000. We kind of went back and forth, came to $5,500. It's not what I would have preferred, but I mean, It's a 20-year-old German luxury car with 147,000 miles on it. It's, $5,500 is not bad. Yeah,
honestly,
it just needs to be out of my possession at this point.
Yeah. Yeah,
It is
I
a bit of
understand
a white elephant, isn't it?
Yes. If I knew what that means, I would definitely agree with you. But I have no
It's
idea.
an elephant that's white.
Oh, thank you. That makes so much more sense.
So, I don't know. I guess I can explain it if you guys want. It's like medieval India. There was like, I guess a albino elephant was like a holy creature or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say if the king gave a white elephant to a nobleman as a gift, it would basically not be able to, like, you couldn't force it to do any work for you. So you just had to feed it like bales and bales of hay every single day to keep it alive. And so it just
Yeah.
ended up costing you money. And it was basically like, here's a gift that will ruin you financially.
Great. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of
Apt
sense.
description. Very apt description of a 20-year-old Audi.
That's so good. I've heard the expression used before, but I didn't want to look dumb and ask. So now I know, and that's good.
That's gonna
I'm
be.
fine with looking dumb, so I'm glad
That's
to know
my
now.
car. Yeah, that's my car too. Like when I sell that Camaro, that's what it is. It's a fucking money pit that I will hopefully be able to give to someone else to pour money into.
There's always another sucker out there willing to make the same mistakes you've made.
Yup.
The potential buyer actually said when the check engine light came on, he goes, "I fucking hate Audis. I don't know why I'm trying to buy another one." And I was like, this bodes well for me selling this car. And then he was like, "Yeah, so I'll still buy it if you get that checked out." I was like, "Okay, buddy. I see you too like making poor decisions."
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's like so ubiquitous for all car people where they're like, I hate this thing. I'll buy it next week. Or, like, here I go doing it again. And you're just like, but you hate it. You just said so. But I get it. I do it. I just can't explain it.
I've been trying to figure out if I hate my Cutlass because I actually really like it and it looks cool, but it's just betrayed me at exactly the worst spots at the worst times. And I just have PTSD around it.
Yeah.
I think we all have the same form of like childhood trauma where we're like, hey, if I'm feeling hate, at least I'm feeling something. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you more about my Subaru in a minute, but like, I did finally get it running, and like, I've been thinking, like, every time I've been fixing it the last 2-3 months or whatever, how long it's been, I'm like, I should fucking sell this thing and get a more modern car. And then I drove it. I'm like, nope, I love this car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that's the love-hate relationship with cars. You fucking hate them when they don't work, and then they start to work again, and you're like, oh, God, I missed you. I missed you so much. It's like an abusive ex.
When I worked across the city, I worked far enough away that I did the math, and it was going to be cheaper for me to buy, like, a Prius or something, like, with decent gas mileage. Like, it only had to be, like, high 20s miles to a gallon. It would pay for itself in the gas savings of not driving my van to work every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And once I crunched the numbers and realized that, like, I could do that without spending more money and I wouldn't have to worry about wear and tear on my van and all that stuff, I still didn't do it.
Because then you would have to drive a Prius every day. And, like, that's not worth it. That's not worth it at all.
Yeah, I like my vans.
You know what I actually hate about the Prius the most? The interior. I feel like I'd like it a lot. It's weird. The setup is weird to me. They put shit in the middle of the dash that I'm just like, no, that should be right here in the middle or right in front of the driver. I don't like it.
Yeah.
There's just weird shit that you do in the interior that makes it weird.
It is kind of like someone took a Camry or a Corolla or whatever and, dressed it up for like a sci-fi movie as like, one of the props in a sci-fi movie or something.
Yes. And it's about that quality too, I feel like.
Yeah.
I actually don't think I've ever been in a Prius before in my life. Oh, wait, nope, that's a lie. That's a lie. My friend had a Prius, and I was in it one time. But other than that, I don't think I really paid attention to, like, the setup or anything. So I have no idea. I talk a lot of shit about them, but I don't really
They're
know
weird. They're just weird. I feel like you could get used to it, but, like, it's a little funky. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, every car has its quirks.
One of my coworkers was pointing out a couple of years ago, like, why do all the like electric and hybrid cars have to look weird? Why can't they just look like a normal car?
Yeah,
You know?
I think they're really like trying to like lean into the like it's electric, and I'm like, I kind of just want it to be a car that's
Right.
electric. Like, please just make a car and then say it's electric. Like,
Yeah, no, they got to make everything unique and futuristic and fancy and hard to use. You have to use
That's like
your thumbprint
it's
to
just
unlock the door and shit like that.
Please just take this electric car and put it on train tracks and bigger and string like 100 of them together and just have that be a car.
It'll be
That's a
self-driving.
great idea. That's a really good idea. You should pitch that to Elon Musk.
Elongated muskrat. That's his name.
Yes, it is.
The traitor to the country of Ukraine.
yeah,
He's done treason against a country that he's never been to.
Yes. All right. Well, Connor, I think it's you for car updates.
Okay, yeah. I'll keep mine pretty brief because I haven't really done terribly too much. I mean, shortly before the show, I spent about 10 minutes finally putting the handle onto the hydraulic handbrake I have in the car. Because so the last time I had like, I think I mentioned on the air, I switched up my hydraulic handbrake setup. So I used to have the setup that was like mounted to the trans tunnel. It was like some old school eBay fucking handle that was like, I don't know, 2 to 2.5 feet long, and I had a custom bracket and everything, and it was a poor installation on my part, and it was a shitty handle and all that stuff. So it's been in the car for years, and it's never really locked up the wheels. So like it is so fucking pointless.
But it
so
looks so cool.
It did not even look cool, like in my opinion. Like it kind of did, I guess. Like it looks kind of, but like it kind of sucked. So I did install a new setup that like they have a GK Tech has a setup where it mounts to the shifter location on the trans, like on the trans tunnel up on top, and then it has a section that like slips under the fucking trim and just hangs out there, and it's real thick and meaty. So like you don't have to cut any trim or anything, and it just puts everything in a good spot that's like way more comfortable, because like I had this like bracket that was digging into my leg every time I drove the car.
Oh God.
So it's moved it up into a better location, and the other thing it does is it is a reverse it's reversed actuation. So like before I would pull the handle in, and like the master cylinder is on the backside towards the seat. So like you pull the handle and it pushes the pin in with the handle. Whereas now my setup is you pull the handle and it's on a pivot point, and so the bottom of the handle goes forward when I pull it back and pushes the piston in. So it's a different setup, but I think it's a little more efficient. The handle is about 18 inches long or something, so it is much shorter. So the thing is, so like my old handle was really long. I'd have to pull it. You know, you pull that handle 1.5 feet, and it barely locks up the wheels. This one, I can't say I've tested it out like actually driving and trying to lock the wheels, but like you can only move the thing a maximum of like 6 to 8 inches. Like you can't move it that much because it's that tight, which is nice, because really you don't want to have to pull something 18 inches to have it actuate while you're drifting. That's a lot of movement that you don't want to do. So like it's really easy to pull, but if you have to pull it a fucking mile to do anything, it's not very useful. So this new setup, it has a much shorter actuation. It looks a lot better in the car. It's got this really cool red handle and everything, instead of like looking black and blending in. So like you can see it now, which is kind of cool. So
Very
far,
cool. Red makes it faster. Yeah.
Red makes it faster. It adds 10 horsepower. So
yeah,
it looks better. It's like way more comfortable to drive with it, and it's situated in a better spot. So like everything about it, it's better. One problem I have now is if I drive with the windows open at all, air comes in through all the bolt holes that used to hold the old bracket, and it's like hot air right now. Like it's warm outside, but then it like passes right by the engine and then the trans and the catalytic converter, and then it hits my leg. So it's hot. So if the windows are closed, it's fine. But if the windows are open, there's just hot air pouring into the car through like I think there was like 4 bolts holding it on. So there's 4 bolt holes that I have to figure out a way to plug. I'm either going to put the old bolts in there and just fucking be a hack and just put a bunch of bolts in there and close it up. Or what I might do is, I don't know, I might like cut out a piece of, I don't know, something or other, garbage, steel, whatever, put a bunch of silicone on one side and fucking slap it on there just to cover the holes and seal it up.
Which is a less hack option, you're saying?
I'm thinking that's a less hack option. I'll cold weld it too. Like, you know, I'll cold weld the fucking sides of it, but like put a bunch of silicone on one side so it fills all the holes and I don't get a bunch of air coming through. I am nervous that this won't work and that I'll like, maybe it'll be a hack fucking thing that'll just be like, it doesn't work, which would also be bad. So I don't know how I'm going to plug all those holes, but I have to do something about that.
I mean, I would have just done some duct tape over the top of that and called it good, but...
See, I feel like my option is slightly less hack than duct tape, but
oh yeah,
I should try duct tape first just to prove out the concept and see how it works. You know, like, I don't know. But anyway, I gotta plug those holes at some point. Because I don't know. In the winter, it's either gonna be like nice because it's heat, or it's gonna be super cold because like I don't know. Either way, I should probably plug those holes up somehow. But the new brake is super cool, or feels cool right now. I'm going to test it out on the track on Tuesday. So I'm going to finish up work, drive to the track, and give it a fucking try. So we'll see how, if it actually locks up on the track or whatever. That could be a very big improvement over, you know, the factory handbrake. So that could be a good option there.
So is it actuating the rear brake caliper or the rear brake calipers, or do you have a second set of calipers that it's actuating?
So there's two different setups that one could use. You could add a second set of calipers in the rear, mm-hmm. and that is like they just call that a dual caliper setup. And what would happen is you would have a master cylinder that has its own fluid reservoir, and it just goes straight to those dedicated calipers. That's not the setup that I have. The setup that I have instead rips out all your shit out of ABS, takes all the ABS stuff out, and you just rewire the lines to fucking, you put a bunch of T's in there, and I don't know, I got a kit years ago. So I just fucked up all the brake lines, put them into all these different directions, and this is called an inline system. So when I actuate that lever, it goes to the existing rear caliper brakes. It doesn't affect the front, obviously, but it is in line with the whole system. So, like, when I hit the foot brake, the fluid is still traveling through the handbrake there. You know what I mean? So, like,
and it's still working for your front and rear brake calipers. Like, both of them are working when you hit the foot brake?
Correct. Yes. Okay. Yes. But when I hit the handbrake, it's only the rears.
Gotcha.
Now, if I try and, like...
ABS anymore?
No. I have the ABS block, but like I pulled all the lines out of that, and they're just totally separate now. Sometimes I have an ABS light, sometimes I don't. I don't know how that works because like this car does not have ABS anymore, and it should theoretically it should be throwing a code all the fucking time because it's like super not working. But I don't know. Yeah, my dash looks like a Christmas tree most of the time. It's I have a lot of lights. Most of them I can ignore.
I wish any of the lights in my dash worked.
Now the problem with the setup I have, like technically, if you have like a dual caliper setup, if you hit the foot brake and pull the lever, you will get like extra braking power. Under the system that I have, if I hit the foot brake, I probably can't. I can maybe marginally pull the handbrake, but like. There's a huge resistance, so like it's not doing anything basically, because it's all part of the same system, right? So like, you don't have that option, but usually you don't need that. So, So yeah, mine is an inline setup, is what it's called. And yeah, I'm excited to try it out. And then I've got another drift event at like the Super Fun track in a few weeks. So um, right now I'm kind of like seat time is really what I need.
Yeah.
So that's really all I've got going. I mean, I did so today. The reason I didn't have the handle in this setup, by the way, is because I don't know if I lost them or if they never sent them. But there's these little inserts that go into the lever because there's like a bolt that goes through around the pivot point, but like it's much smaller than the actual hole in the handle. So they supply these like plastic inserts that go inside there and like keep it from moving around. When I first installed it, I installed it just to make sure everything else was good, but like the handle had like, you know, a good half inch of play in it or whatever. It was just like clunk, 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 clunk. So it was flopping around all over the place. So I had to email them and have them send me out new inserts. And so I finally installed the inserts with the handle today. And I pulled it. I mean, really, all I have is I pulled it a few times, but it feels real fucking good. So I'm
Nice.
excited to try that out. And hopefully for the next few events, it's starting to cool down a little bit. So hopefully I won't have to worry too much about heat management. But I do have some new gauges that I'm going to have installed that are going to help me monitor some of that stuff. But of course, I got the parts, and different sensors have the wrong thread pitch and fucking all this bullshit. So I have to like email the gauge manufacturer and find out what the fuck they sent me, and like, all right, so what am I going to do with this and that? But so that's kind of an install coming later down the line. But for right now, car's good. It has theoretically a working handbrake, or like hydraulic handbrake, which I have not had the luxury of having before. So very excited to see how that works out. But that's pretty much all I got. I guess that wasn't that brief.
It was
But,
as brief as we could expect you to be reasonably.
I suppose, yeah. So who's next? That Bryant?
That's Bryant.
Sure. So I've been kind of busy, but I'll try and keep it brief. Like I said, I got my Sabru back up and running. I had a good bit of help from Zach loaning me tools, and I forget if I said this last time, but I just decided to leave the old cam seals in there rather than break off the bolts and whatever.
Oh yeah.
But I did kind of panic there. I thought I did something wrong with the timing belt, but I got it working and running, and I drove it around to do errands yesterday, and it drives good. No more vacuum leak, throwing codes or anything.
Hell yeah.
It does leak a little bit of coolant, and I think I smelled gasoline, so I might need to tighten up the hose clamps in a couple spots. And I'm probably due for a fluid change on the transmission and diff, and probably the brake fluid too. So I should probably do that. I don't know, maybe before the winter. But and I need to probably this week I'm gonna take it in to get the AC refilled and get an alignment and all that. So it still needs a few odds and ends. I need to polish the headlights. They're getting kind of yellow and cloudy. But yeah, I enjoy driving it. It's fun making boost, and I like the new tires that I have on it. They're pretty nice. I got all the wheels, all the Saturn wheels that I'm going to put on my MR2. So I just need to decide what kind of tires to put on that. But I guess I'm not in a huge hurry or anything. Oh, and so for Labor Day weekend, I went on vacation with my brother and some of his friends, and we were driving in. My brother's girlfriend has a 2020 Volkswagen Tiguan, and I hadn't driven like a modern, small SUV recently. Like I drove it when they had both been drinking, so I was like, here, I'll drive. I'm not used to being like sitting up high and like yeah. having no connection to the controls like you do with a modern SUV. Like everything felt very numb. And there's like a point when I was passing a semi truck in a curve with like broken pavement, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what the tires are doing. I'm sketched out. But it was fine. I think it's a 2-liter turbo engine, so it's got decent power. But I think I heard some auto journalists talking about this when those cars came out. Like Volkswagen a few years ago changed their infotainment system and like made it really unintuitive. And like we had a really hard time. Like we couldn't figure out how to get like the GPS out on the screen. So we're just using phones for that. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, decently comfortable. It got like, I think 25 to 30 miles per gallon for the whole trip. So pretty good. And I'm trying to think what else. There's something else. I'm sure I'll interrupt someone else to say, oh yeah. Something else to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't like SUVs for a lot of reasons. It seems like I'm just driving around nowadays and just nothing I see. I only see SUVs driving around. There's no regular cars. And when I do, it's an Altima or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you hear the Altima's going away?
No, what?
Yeah.
They're
Nissan is canceling the Altima.
So what are people with bad credit going to drive then?
I don't
Just
know.
gonna steal an Altima.
What? What did you say, Brandon?
I said they're just gonna steal an Altima.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget. I mean, we're moving into 8 and 9 year auto loans soon, right? That's coming up. So people with bad credit can just get a 10-year auto loan, whatever. And that's where we're headed.
And you're gonna get a 5,000 pound SUV that gets 20 miles per gallon or whatever. And
yeah, soon people with good credit are going to be getting 8-year loans. Like it's really gotten bad. But I feel like it's worth noting that like I actually saw someone point out on Twitter that like, and I was guilty of thinking that like, oh my God, cars are just so expensive. And someone actually pointed out that no, actually cars are remarkably cheap. You just don't get paid enough. Which I think is what people are really trying to communicate is they're like, no one can afford cars anymore. But honestly, in terms of like price, they are cheaper than they used to be by a lot. It's just that wages have gone up 0%, thereby being effectively a pay cut. So cars are not more expensive. We're just more poor. So anyway, sorry.
That makes me feel so much better.
The effect is the same, but yeah.
Yeah, fuck. I spent $100 at the grocery store yesterday. It fucking.
You got like 3 things.
I went to another grocery store to get other stuff too, so I spent even more money.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I have a solution for that.
Yeah?
Yeah. Ride your bike to the grocery store, and you won't be able to fit $100 worth of groceries in your backpack.
Okay. Good deal.
You'll be limited to spending like $50.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say ride your bike to the grocery store so that the camera can't get your license plate when you steal all your groceries and then ride away on the bicycle.
So many stores around me. I've been taking credit for this, and my friends are like, "You did not do this," and I'm like, "I know it, but just give me this." So many places are no longer letting you use self checkout unless it's like with a cashier assisting you.
What's the point of that even? I love that we've come that full circle. Like, just brilliant, truly amazing capitalist innovation right there, everybody.
The latest episode of the Trillbillies podcast had a really good story about someone shoplifting from Walmart. I'll just go back and listen to that. I forget what it was called, but yeah, fun stuff. Oh, I was going to say, I am kind of second guessing whether I wanted to get these Saturn wheels. So if someone has 15-inch wheels that they want to trade me, let me know.
Fair enough.
carsandcomrades@gmail.com. But
what's the lug pattern?
4x100.
Okay. It's important detail.
Yeah. Yes.
Why are you second guessing the Saturn wheels?
Just because it might be better to have something a little bit smaller and lighter, and have more.
You'll never know the difference. You will never know the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I can notice in that car when it's like 5 pounds low on the tire pressure. So
that's
I don't know. it's quite a bit more connected to the road than a
Yeah.
Tiguan.
I would hope so.
Yeah. But Brandon, I think that's your turn.
All right. I ever since I started my new job, I haven't really had a lot of free time. So, real easy. I just finally ordered a rebuild kit for a Holly carburetor, and I put together a carb for my Cutlass because I stay in my neighborhood so much now that I actually feel a little bit more comfortable driving it, in spite of the PTSD that it's given me. If I drive it to work, there's like one vaguely inopportune spot that it could break down at, and everywhere else would just be a cakewalk.
Nice.
Yeah, my motivation for fixing my car is strategically planning where I can break down at. I got it on today, like literally like 30 minutes before we went on call, and the only real problem was that because it's a mechanical fuel pump, like all the older V8s were, it had been sitting for a few weeks since I pulled the carburetor off, so I only got it to turn over a handful of times before I killed the battery. So I don't know, its battery's on charge right now, and hopefully, this time tomorrow, even maybe if I'm feeling motivated, it'll be working again, and I can actually drive that stupid fucking piece of shit.
Nice.
Yeah. The other news is I've been riding my bike to work most of the time, 3 or 4 days a week. I only drive in bad weather, or in the case of a bicycle breakdown, of which there have been 3 now.
That's too many. How? In a bike? Yeah. There's nothing to it. What even breaks?
I will say, one of them was just getting a flat. On a bicycle, it happens. You have roads that are, littered with just garbage and potholes and shit. You get flats all the time. I didn't have stuff with me to fix it, so it just stayed at work for the rest of until the next day when I walked home and just drove my van, picked it up. But I broke my of the bike that I really liked and have had for 12 or 13 years. No longer than that. Like at least 14 or 15. I broke the frame clean. Like I won't say clean in half because it's not like it's 2 pieces, but the seat tube snapped.
Jesus Christ! It's like I've never met a person who drives around. Oh yeah, I broke the frame in my car again, and now he's like, oh, I broke the frame in my bicycle. It's like, what are you doing wrong? Are you dropping it off of a skyscraper every day? Like, how does this happen?
I knew someone in college that broke a mountain bike frame, but that was like taking it off a jump or something. So
are you taking it off of jumps?
No. I honestly, like, the best as I can figure is I wasn't using the frame the way it was really intended, because this was a fairly high-end Italian frame from around 99 or 2000. It was all, like, aluminum aero tubing, and I think that it was just only ever genuinely meant to be ridden for actual race purposes. It was a time trials or triathlon frame. And I'm just riding it on the worst fucking roads around town. I rode this bike for years in Philly, just beating the piss out of it. And I took it to my shop to try and braze the where it broke, because my welder won't weld aluminum. You need to be able to have like an AC rig for that. And it really just didn't want to take to it. But as I was cleaning it up and trying to figure out what my plan of attack was, I found numerous other hairline cracks from the bottom bracket up.
Ooh.
And I just accepted that the frame's life was over. Don't know if I have the budget for it right now, because I'm trying to save for some other stuff, but I did find an exact one of those frames on sale for a reasonable price with everything included. So I might replace it in the next couple of weeks. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then the other day, I broke one of my pedals.
Nice.
Start on equipment.
Yeah, just shit. Dude, I'm a big fucking guy.
Yeah.
And I can't help but assume that at least a lot of this is like maybe not a cascading effect, but I've been riding with a lot of these specific parts. Like those pedals I had on a bicycle that I bought in like 2007. So I mean, like, none of this shit's like brand spanking new. But I don't know. I've put together a new bicycle and shit. And I'm remembering how much I enjoy riding a bicycle now that there's not so much other transportation related stress in my life, which I feel like there's a larger lesson to be learned there also. But yeah, I'm loving the shit out of riding my bike a couple of miles to work every day and home, and running my errands on a fucking bike, and just getting in my van when I feel like it or need to. Or I'm just like, man, this thing's fucking sick, and I haven't driven it in 3 or 4 days. I'm gonna take a ride.
That's cool. Yeah,
it feels so fucking good, man.
That's the dream right there, honestly. To be able to drive the project cars when you want to, and not every day because you have to.
Dude, that's what I'm saying too. Like, I'm feeling more motivated to get the Cutlass on the road than I have in a while, just because if I break down somewhere local, it don't matter, and two, it's just low stress. If it breaks down, I'll get it towed somewhere, and I don't have to worry about shit else until it's fixed. I just do whatever. It's great.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even kidding. Like I spend like $50 at the grocery store now just because I can't fit anything else in my backpack.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, I mean, it's because riding a bike is fun. It's just something that you accept that, like, yeah, you do it 2 or 3 times more. The only thing I found that's slightly sketchy, I shouldn't even say this on air, but you guys know me, I'm going to. It's a lot harder to like ride my bike home drunk than it is to drive home drunk.
Is it? I used to love getting plastered and riding the bike.
Yeah, that's a good time.
But okay, also I ride fixed gear.
Oh, man.
My bike is fixed gear, no brakes. So
okay, that's rough. Okay, yeah, don't drink and drive that. Jesus.
So I put together a new bike, and I think the first place I rode it to was my regular spot, because I've been having a rough week. I had to put my kitty to sleep, so we're gonna not address that further. But if I'm talking about having a bad week or the fact that I have been drinking to excess, this is anomalous, and it's behavior that's already stopped. But yeah, man, like the second time I ever rode the new bike, which does have a frame geometrically different enough that it takes me getting used to. Oh God, it was. I think I nearly crashed within like 15 feet because I was just too drunk and just like frantically trying to get my feet into the pedals on this highly trafficked road where just fortunately it's like 11 o'clock and no one's around. But as to where I could be blacked out and throwing up on myself and still drive a 3 on the tree without fucking stumbling.
Nice. Probably best to not drive so much in that state, but you know.
I've received countless compliments from my friends on my ability to drive while blacked out. Or on mushrooms.
Not great.
Yeah, I'm gonna say maybe they're not the most perceptive, or maybe they don't have your best interest in mind there.
My favorite was when I was on mushrooms with some friends, and they were just like blown away because my van wouldn't start. So I popped the hood and fiddled with stuff, and then it started.
Okay, that is kind of impressive.
That's funny. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, it was just a carburetor problem. I had it all the time, and I wasn't on so many mushrooms that I couldn't remember that. But they were like, we don't even know what you're doing, like, regular, and you're just, like, barely here doing it. I'm like, hell yeah. It's like when you're a kid and you watch your parents do something that seems really impressive, but then as an adult, you're like, that's really easy. Yeah. All you did was pay a bill.
Well, that's still hard for me.
Yeah, as soon as I said that, I remembered that, like, my gas got shut off last week.
I think maybe it's the hills that are the trouble with biking drunk, because back when I lived in Golden and didn't own a car, I would bike to the bar or to the Coors Brewery and get free samples pretty often. And, biking back was always a little bit of a challenge. Just, it seems to fuck with your muscles a bit. And there's a couple times where I had to get off and just walk it home.
Okay.
It's like,
I think
I can't balance.
I think I agree with you but the opposite. So disagree.
Okay.
I opposite agree with you.
No, okay, what I mean is, the hills absolutely do fuck with me more when I'm drinking. But because I ride fixed gear by preference and brakeless because I just keep not putting on. But I don't like it. I want to put a front brake on my bike. I just keep not doing it. Riding downhill fixed gear drunk is a fucking headache, dude, because your feet are going so fast or you're having to fight it or whatever. It sucks. Now, if you're talking about going uphill, no, dude, you got all that liquid muscle in you, and you can just really power up the fucking hills. I mean, you'll throw up, but you can get there.
I was gonna say that was my experience. I didn't feel so good after doing that kind of thing.
Well, no one drinks to feel good. I mean,
yeah. But you reminded me. I have a bicycle update myself. I got new tires for my recumbent bike. I got the 2-inch wide, kind of soft tires that are a little bit more cushy ride, and it rides a lot better now. It's I can't feel all the little cracks in the sidewalk anymore. It is a little bit more rolling resistance. Maybe I've got one of those speed camera signs on on my street or whatever, and so instead of going 8 miles an hour, I'm going 7 miles an hour past it. But I will suggest recommend these tires for a recumbent bike where you can't sit up off the seat to get some extra suspension or whatever. But when I was putting them on in my garage, I have a shared garage with my neighbor since I live in a condo, and I had the bike up on upside down on the seat and the handlebars kind of balanced with the wheel off of it, and without touching it or anything, it just fell over onto my neighbor's car and scratched the hell out of his fender.
Oh no.
So I left a note with my phone number for him, just saying hey, sorry, I'll pay for this if I need to. And he hasn't called or texted me, so I don't know. I still need to talk to him in person and just say, hey, I'm really sorry, man. But so yeah, maybe project car update on someone else's car in the future.
I could do a project car update on someone else's car, but it's embarrassing and I don't want to do it.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll say my friend's headlight is fixed, but their hood will no longer open.
Yeah, you don't need that.
All right, I think that's our project car updates.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to South Korea in a minute. Do you guys want to take a quick break?
I could grab something to drink.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
All right, we're back.
And we're talking about South Korea. So this was kind of inspired by an episode of the D program where they were talking about just the general history of South Korea and a lot of the sort of uprisings and labor issues, or I should say labor movements that were happening there in the 20th century. And they mentioned something kind of offhand about how Hyundai workers were involved with one of these uprisings. And, I looked into it a little bit more, and that is true. A lot of auto workers have been involved with, various uprisings and labor actions. But there's also just a fascinating history of, ordinary workers resisting state oppression. Because you might have heard that South Korea is capitalist or democratic, or I don't know,
or fasci.
Yeah, you might have. Yeah, it's not really the most democratic country in the world, especially because it was a military dictatorship for I think around almost 30 years.
Yeah, but at least it wasn't as bad as the evil, awful North Koreans, which were economically more viable for many, many years.
Yeah, and I'll get into this, but basically the whole reason why the South Korean economy is doing better at all. I mean, besides like sanctions and blockades and all that kind of thing, is that they just worked the people to death, like basically like fascist levels of worker exploitation. That's people had a good reason to rise up and oppose the government. It just wasn't just I don't know, liberal ideas of fairness and democracy. It was also, hey, we're getting a raw deal here. So I'll suggest, I'll put it in the show notes, that episode of the D program. It's a good overview of the history. But also I'll recommend the very excellent podcast Blowback, which I believe it was season
3.
Yeah, season 3.
I will second that. I learned so much from that. That like I listened to that season and then I went back and listened to the other seasons, and that is, I got to say it, that is a better podcast than ours by a lot. I mean, it's not fair to compare us.
Yeah. Sorry, we haven't composed our own music for this podcast, so
at least one of their songs is from Gwar, which is extra level for me anyway.
Yeah,
that's fucking awesome. I just saw Gwar live. They were great.
I just missed Gwar live.
Oh man,
they were probably great.
I'm sure. Wait a few weeks; they'll probably show back up in your town anyway.
Fair enough. I have seen Gwar a whole bunch of times.
I saw them on Halloween once in like 2018, I think. They were pretty fun.
Oh, they're always great. I've seen them on some weird lineups. It was like the last time I saw them, it was like a New York hardcore band and like a sludge metal band, and then Gwar just being fucking Gwar.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, so I'll go through a little bit of the history of South Korea kind of briefly here. So I probably should have looked this up, but they were occupied by Japan. I don't remember the exact year. I think it was around 1900 was when they were invaded by Japan and occupied. And it was basically a, like a client state or a colony. There were, Japan was building all these businesses and treating the Korean people like second-class citizens, and suppressing their language, having them speak Japanese and use Japanese customs and that sort of thing. And then in August 15th of 1945, Japan surrendered and Korea was liberated. It was occupied in the north by the Soviet Union and China, and in the south by America and the other allied forces. And they had the dividing line at the 38th parallel between the occupation forces. And just as in Germany, this was seen at the time as a temporary measure, but unfortunately it persisted. In 1948, they were officially divided into two different countries, and Syngman Rhee became the president of South Korea. And I'll apologize for any mispronunciations. The good thing about Korean is it's a pretty phonetic language, and but I probably will mispronounce some of this stuff. So right off the bat in 1948, there were uprisings in Jeju, Suncheon, and Yeosu, I don't know, and that were brutally put down by the official government of South Korea. It's estimated between 14,000 and 60,000 people were killed in all this fighting.
Yikes.
So off to a great start. Also in 1948, the government, such as it was, passed the National Security Act. And this was meant to, quote, secure the security of the state and the subsistence and freedom of nationals by regulating any anticipated activities compromising the safety of the state. So this is kind of vague, but effectively it made communism illegal in South Korea. So like no socialist parties are allowed, basically. It also made illegal the recognition of North Korea as a political entity, organizations advocating the overthrow of the government, the printing, distribution, and ownership of anti-government material, and any failure to report such violations by others.
So they made not snitching illegal, basically. Like, you had to snitch. That was the law.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is, which is like the almost a trope in like dystopia novels where it's like you have to snitch on your family or you'll be put to death, and it's like, yeah, that was really that was South Korea under occupation from the United States. Huh?
Yep.
Who thought? I thought they were spreading freedom and democracy.
Yep. So just in case you think this is like an old, outdated law that's not enforced anymore, in 2002, a new recruit to the South Korean army named Lee was sentenced to 2 years in prison for having said to a fellow soldier, "I think Korean separation is not the fault of the North Koreans, but of the Americans."
Oh, yeah, I can't say that.
So the military prosecutor's office could not charge him for this comment alone, but they searched his home and found various illicit books. And charged him under that act. So basically,
Illicit
just owning.
books.
Ooh, it doesn't say what they were, but just owning, any like communist literature was enough to get this guy put in prison for 2 years. So, in June of 1950, North Korea invaded the South, trying to reunify the country, and go listen to the Blowback podcast
that is
more info on that.
No one knows for sure who started it, or it was complicated. But
yeah, exactly.
The narrative here is that the North Koreans invaded.
The war lasted for 3 years and killed at least 3 million people. And also during the war, retreating South Korean forces executed tens of thousands of suspected communists or just sympathizers, either in prison or in re-education camps, which was known as the Bodo League massacre at the time. So there was all these, basically if you were just suspected of being communist or helping the communists, you could get killed.
Yeah, and imagine like the people that were suspected of being communists, they were suspected of like, imagine the most ignorant chud you can who calls like every Democrat is a communist. That's who was deciding who's a communist who needs to be executed, for the record. Like, that is who was making that call. So,
Right. Japan invaded Korea in 1910. That's when they annexed. Okay, so in 1960, Syngman Rhee won re-election. I believe this was his fourth term in office. And there were very credible accusations that the election was rigged. So there were massive protests because of this. These were brutally suppressed, leading to the deaths of at least 186 people. Eventually, Rhee was ousted in the April 19th revolution and replaced by Yun Pusun. That government lasted less than 2 years before a military coup led by General Park Chung-hee. And in a bid to, legitimate his rule, Park had elections and won in 1963. And this is when he really, ramped up the fascist suppression of workers, leading to, the economy was booming, but it was really for these big industrial conglomerates called chaebols. These are kind of like the equivalent of Japanese zaibatsu. Some of the examples are like Hyundai, LG, Samsung, Daewoo, the big Korean companies that you've heard of. And a lot of these are like family owned. So it's very similar to like sort of the crony capitalism that was going on in like Nazi Germany, where the state was helping out these private businesses to build up industrial capacity quickly.
So in those industries, we're all just a big family here.
Yeah. Okay, so Syngman Rhee was in power for a long time, and in August of 1979, there was a sit-in protest at the YH Trading Company, and the workers there were suppressed by white riot police, which resulted in the death of one female worker. In October of that year, the cities of Busan and Masan rose up against the government, starting with student protests at Busan National University. Eventually, it grew to include all kinds of different workers from all walks of life. President Park declared martial law on the 18th of October, and then mobilized the army on the 20th. And then on the 26th of October, President Park was assassinated by Kim Jae-gyeol, the director of the KCIA, which is the Korean CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. South Korea just kind of copied a lot of American institutions. Like, they have a Democratic Party and a Republican Party. They have the Korean Central Intelligence Agency, which is basically the same thing as the American. But I guess unlike certain American presidents, they just did this assassination out in the open. And so there was a good bit of chaos after that assassination. There was a brief rule by a civilian president, Choi Koyo-han. Probably pronounced that wrong. And then less than 2 years later, there was another military coup where Chun Doo-hwan became the dictator. So in 1980, there was the Gwangju uprising that he put down very brutally and killed a lot of people. And then that brings us to 1987, when the one of the biggest protest movements started in January of 1987. A student activist named Park Jung-chul was tortured to death by police while in custody. At first, this was suppressed. This information was suppressed. But actually, it was a Catholic priest at his funeral that kind of got the word out that this happened. And, led to even more protests going on. And then there's another protester killed, Lee Han-yol, on June 9th when a tear gas grenade hit him in the head. This eventually led to giant protests with up to 1.5 million people joining into the protests on June 18th, which is it's pretty big. I believe that's just in Seoul, but 1.5 million. That's quite a few. So eventually, the government issued the June 29 declaration that capitulated on a lot of the demands of the protesters by promising to amend the Constitution and release political prisoners. And this led to sort of a blossoming of the labor movement, which had been suppressed under the military dictatorship. The Hyundai Engine Trade Union was established in Ulsan on July 5th. And then within the year, 4,000 new unions representing some 700,000 workers were established.
Which now, so this is one of those times where, to me, I think about like what is fascism, and I feel like that's can sometimes be debatable to some extent, and it's had various different forms, but depending on when and where it kind of crops up. But like, that's a pretty everything that you've described so far. I mean, it just sounds like South Korea was an outright fascist country, and I sometimes wonder, like, I feel like some people say, oh, you call everything fascist, and honestly, I'm like, I feel like almost everything is fascist until proven otherwise. Like, it just
I was going to make that joke, but I was waiting for you to pause, and you just
I just bulldozed through it. But
yeah,
I just like I often throw around the term fascist a lot, and people will accuse me of using it too much. And I'm like, no, literally just everything you've been taught is fascist. Like, we live in a fascist country now. Doesn't matter who's in power, it's fascist. And almost every country in the capitalist world is fascist. And I'm like, to me, more and more, I don't see a difference between capitalism and fascism. Like, I really just, it ebbs and flows, and maybe it hides itself better sometimes. But really, this is fascism 101. Stop labor unions from existing, have a military dictatorship. Like, that's, what the fuck else is there to it? And like, kill all the communists. That's fascism.
Right.
That's what it's all. That's like the core elements of fascism right there. So I don't know. It's like, I feel like we can't use that term too much. I really don't know that there's anything that like you could call fascist and be like, well, actually, that's not fascist. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that fascism is anti-communism, and anti-communism is fascism. So as soon as there's subjugation and oppression and murder of communists, that's fascism. You really don't need another qualification, although most of these
they're happy to give us more.
Yeah, they're happy to give us more, but that's all it really takes.
Yeah, like, America is not on the brink of fascism. America has been a fascist country for at least 200 years.
Yeah,
like,
since day one. Since white
fascism
people fucking stepped foot on the mainland.
Yeah. Before it was even coined as like an understood, right? Like, capitalism existed before the term capitalism. Fascism existed before the term fascism.
Yeah, it took a little while to get a term to define it, but it's always been the same.
Yeah. And in South Korea, like, just to remind the listener, like, during this whole time, it was being supported by the United States. The U.S. is supposedly the bastion of liberal ideals, like, tolerance and multiculturalism, and having different viewpoints and freedom of speech and all that. And meanwhile, in South Korea, they're like, nope, kill all the communists, outlaw the labor unions, lock people up if they have the wrong books in their house.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a side tangent, but like, this just kind of demonstrates certain things that are truths that you can understand the world through today. And I, again, cannot recommend Blowback enough, as it shows this. During the Korean War, it wasn't like, yeah, it was the United States military doing most of the stuff, but like, just to be clear, it was the UN forces. This was a UN action. So the United Nations, everything they did was fascist, and like, it was at the behest of the United States, under the control of United States generals who were controlling the quote unquote UN forces. And that, just that setup exists today. So when like the UN says this US adversary is doing awful things, you have to understand that you got to take that with a grain of salt, because it is really just a US cutout. It is just US hegemony making itself look legitimate. And that was true then. It's true today. The United Nations is really just all a bunch of countries under, coercion from the United States through various trade deals and economic benefits or the threat of sanctions. Countries vote that way based on all of that shit. So like, when you hear this, oh, the UN condemns da 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 da, almost all of it is under control of the US, and the US still looks bad in terms of like not voting for, food as a human right and stuff. But like, we are in control of the United Nations. And so like, all of this stuff happened with like this idea that it was internationally like, this is what's right and reasonable. And that's like super fucked up how that works out.
If, say for instance, the most powerful nation on earth was a fascist nation, what would they do but seek to use their power to legitimize every action that they take against anyone that dares to question their power? And I think that we can all agree that the most powerful nation on the world stage right now is the United States, and it is a fascist nation. Yeah. So of course that's what they do. They try to convince their own populace and the population of all other nations that they are legitimate and that their actions are good and just and the right thing when they're just seeking to protect their own power.
Yeah. Please, President Xi, my people long for freedom.
And I might be misremembering this, but I believe hearing in the Blowback podcast that basically the whole government of South Korea post World War II was chosen from the comprador class, the people that collaborated with the Japanese occupation.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
like,
and many of them went to school in like the United States and stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
so that was a big part of it. And then these are the same people who tell us, all these horror stories about the North Korea, which they've never been to or know anything about. So again, take some of these stories with a grain of salt.
yeah. Oh, by the way, I'll plug another thing. There's a YouTube channel called Boy Boy. A couple of Australian guys that do political stuff, and one of the things they did was take a trip to North Korea, ostensibly to get a haircut like Kim Jong Il or whatever it was. But
You can't do that. You'll be put to death.
yeah,
I heard you'll be put to death if you don't get that haircut. What are you talking about?
Oh no, that's also true. Everyone in North Korea is dead.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Because of their haircuts. Yes, it's a haircut based.
Haircut
They
based
got a 6
political
days.
system.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read at length here from an article from libcom.org. I don't know exactly the politics of this website. They've got a penguin as their icon, which I think represents something. I don't know.
Linux.
Yeah.
Having these.
So in late 1987, strikes shut down production at many large firms, including Daewoo, Hyundai, Kia, Samsung, and a business I've never heard of called Lucky Gold Star. Bus and taxi drivers struck in their thousands in Gwangju, Cheongju, Kunsan, Aku, and Kimji, as well as Seoul. Fishermen struck in coastal areas and in Busan succeeded in shutting down the city's central fish market. 20,000 miners from 32 pits were on strike by mid-August, costing the country nearly half its national coal output. Miners frequently clashed with police, occupied buildings, including a train station in the town of Taipei, and lots of company buildings were burned down.
I support that. Arson against the company. Yeah, that's a good protest tactic. We should add that one to the list of possibilities.
I mean, it worked in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
It did.
Hyundai workers were often the most militant, clashing with police through July and August, and often occupying shipyards and factory buildings.
Hell yeah! All right, Hyundai for the win.
Hyundai workers.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. The workers are the company. I don't value fucking management worth a shit. So,
and here's where I'll say, a lot of people don't know that Hyundai doesn't just make cars. Like, they do a lot of shipping. I don't know if they build the ships or just operate them, but they operate ports and do a lot of just heavy manufacturing, and it's a big heavy industries company. It's kind of like
now I gotta make a joke about the Hyundai Santa Marina or something, or Santa Maria, whatever the fuck. I don't know. Ship name.
Yeah.
Like the Hyundai Santa Fe, but the Santa Maria. Yeah, that's funny.
I feel like they should. Yeah, it should just be like the Hyundai Tiburon. It's just some giant fucking barge. Sorry. Anyway, continue.
So on August 22nd, Daewoo worker Lee Suk-kyu was killed after being hit by a tear gas canister. And then in September, Hyundai workers occupied the Ulsan City Hall. So between June 29th and September 15th, a total of 3,492 labor disputes were recorded by the government, with an average of 44 industrial actions being undertaken per day.
God damn. So, do you have anywhere in your notes like how this was being organized? Like, I'm guessing through the unions, but like, what is the mechanism? Like, how did they go from you can't have any leftist ideas to okay, we now have unions, and also our unions are super fucking militant immediately? Like, I'm just, how did that
So
develop?
there were existing unions, like even during Japanese occupation, but they were just like very tightly controlled. They're basically like, kind of like unions in America where they have like no strike clauses or,
Oh yeah, yeah.
um, like corporate controlled unions, that kind of thing. So, like, comparison in the previous year in 1986, there had only been 276 recorded strikes in the whole country. And then, like, in a few month period, there were like 3,500 in 1987.
I feel like 200
So,
strikes in the United States today would be a lot in a year.
right.
Maybe I'm
Yeah.
crazy. I don't know, but like, I guess I don't know the actual number of strikes, but that would seem like a lot of strikes in the United States, which is really fucking sad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it goes on here a little bit about like some of how these were organized. Walkouts had been purely spontaneous and unorganized at a large scale. The vast majority of workers were effectively on strike illegally.
Really?
Required cooling off periods and other legal mandates had been ignored, and the illegal nature of the strikes was reflected by the tactics adopted by many workers.
Interesting.
Large street demonstrations organized by workers and supporters often turned violent. Workers clashed frequently with police. Company buildings and factories were occupied. Managers were taken hostage,
Nice.
and particularly cruel foremen were beat up.
Nice. Hell yeah.
So this was a lot of sort of pent up aggression after the decades of abuse of the workers during the so-called economic miracle of
Yeah.
the growth of South Korea.
Wait, so the secret to the growth of the South Korean economy was just fascism?
Yeah.
Shocking.
Well, that and huge investment from the West.
So also fascism.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, investment is a light term for that, I think.
And if I'm not mistaken, so like for a long time, North Korea, which they said had a ton of investment from the Soviet Union, and it had a little bit, but not nearly as much as they said. The North was economically far more successful. They just had better planning. They industrialized in a pretty quick manner, even after their country was literally leveled. Where like the quote is, there were not even 2-story buildings left in the country after the war. So they recovered extraordinarily quickly, and they were outpacing the South Koreans. And it was, by my understanding, a pretty big fucking embarrassment for like the entire West was like, oh shit, the North cannot like super outpace the South that we've propped up. So then, of course, they kind of tipped the scales by pouring even more investment in just to save face, basically.
Right.
So like, just kind of goes to show that like the narratives that we are taught are fucking ridiculous. So yeah, through the 60s and 70s, like the North was far outpacing the South, which still had huge issues, and then of course all this pent up rage, which I don't know, might be why they were able to be so militant in their labor actions.
Right. So the following numbers I have, I believe they're from the late 80s or early 90s. It is saying that the average hourly wage across industries was about $1.75 per hour, compared to at the time in the United States, the average was about $13 an hour for manufacturing workers.
I'm sorry, what?
Korean
$13 an hour back in the 80s?
I think this was like Detroit auto workers, like in the 90s.
Oh,
is where they're
gotcha.
pulling
Yeah.
these numbers from. So Koreans also had to work an average 57-hour week with, I believe, with no overtime. So with all these labor actions, the workers were demanding a raise of like between 25 and 60%. and shorter working hours. And in some cases, they got those demands, like up to 60% wage increase. Alongside demands for higher pay, the workers also called for improvements to the disciplined, almost militaristic way of life within the factories, including improvements to the quality of meals in the cafeterias, ending of strict restrictions on dress and hairstyles, ending of compulsory morning exercises, abolition of distinctions between factory workers and office staff, and the termination of evaluation systems by foremen. Central also to the struggle was the issue of representation. Many company unions were taken over, so those were like, unions instituted and controlled by the companies themselves. So many of those were taken over, and thousands of new democratic unions were founded. So strikes continued throughout the year, but the movement hit its peak in August. Millions of workers had been on strike, occupied their workplaces. So many, if not the majority of strikes were successful, with workers achieving significant improvements to the conditions. And like I said, up to 60% increase in wages. And then eventually they were getting ready for the 1988 Olympics in the country. And the dictator decided maybe it wasn't a good look to suppress all these movements. And he called for actual popular elections of the president to happen, which I believe I didn't quite understand the mechanism that Park had put in place in the 60s. But from what I understand, it basically amounted to like a couple dozen politicians picking the president. And it was basically just a rubber stamp on whoever he had chosen as his successor. But, like I said, he didn't get to actually institute that. He just got assassinated. So this was the first election that they had, the people picking the president. And so in February of 1988, Roh Tai-woo was inaugurated as president. And so fast forwarding into the 90s, in December 1996, the National Assembly attempted to pass two laws that could limit workers' rights. They would have made it easier for businesses to fire workers and allowed the use of strike breakers.
Boo.
So in response to this, workers walked off their jobs en masse. So the strike was planned to begin on Friday, January 13th, with a 4-hour walkout. And this included 34,000 workers at Hyundai's factories, 18,000 at Kia, 21,000 at the Hyundai shipyard, and it would also include transit workers that operated the subway system in Seoul, workers at 10 major hospitals in Seoul, and lots of other smaller businesses. And as these protests went on, beyond just asking for these laws to be repealed, they were also calling for the president Kim Young-sam to resign. So remember that national security law that I brought up earlier, the one from 1948. The government threatened union leaders with this law, basically saying, we're going to accuse you and convict you of working with North Korea and being communists, and put you in jail for carrying out these strikes.
Super cool.
So by the third day of the walk-off, there were up to 350,000 workers on strike. And then there were two different trade union groups, sort of like affiliate groups, that had been like not recognized by the government at this point. The Federation of Korean Trade Unions and the or FKTU and the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, KCTU. So they met and decided to create a united front. And then by January 15th, there were around 1 million people striking. So one little tidbit I found interesting is farmers were backing the protest by delivering eggs to the protesters to throw at the police. um, the protests were also backed by the AFL-CIO in the U.S., the Australian Council of Trade Unions, and also North Korean students that were acting in solidarity. On January 16th, the government conceded and affirmed that the bills would be sent back for revision. In March, they were revised, and the trade unions I mentioned, the KCTU, achieved semi-legal status. I believe it was only officially recognized around 1999. The final bill that they sent back for revision was not that much different from the original. A few concessions were made, which, that's kind of the thing with trade trade union protests. Like, even if you keep them up for a while, like, people will eventually like lose enough money that they have to stop.
Yeah, they got to go back to work. That's a bummer.
So one of their demands was school teachers and public servants be allowed to unionize, and that was not changed in the final bill. They were still, let's see, it says school teachers and public servants were still denied full union benefits, and employers were permitted to stop paying union leaders. The big major concession they got was to halt the implementation of a flexible layoff program, but that was only delayed for 2 years. So they had this basically assurance of no layoffs until 1997, when the South Korean government was forced to ask the International Monetary Fund for a loan of $57 billion due to a financial crisis. And this forced South Korea to adopt more Western labor policies in order to remain competitive, it says.
Yeah, what do they call those? Structural
Adjustment plan.
Yes.
Yeah. So this completely unelected group is making demands of South Korean workers, of course.
Oh, it's
same old.
I don't know if I've ever gone on like an extended rant about like World Bank and IMF on here, but the policies that they implement if you default on a loan are effectively they take control of your country.
Right. And we're seeing kind of some of that in Africa with some of the countries that are having coups and basically saying we're not going to put up with this shit anymore.
Yeah, some of the countries historically who have had the best success after defaulting on one of those loans, the ones who have the best luck are the ones who refuse to pay outright and kick them out of the country. I think Thomas Sankara was one that did that.
Yeah.
Well, and this is one of those reasons that, like, for decades and decades, the IMF and the World Bank were the only ones, were the kind of like the only game in town. But now with China in the mix, they're offering much more favorable loans, and it makes money for China, and all they do is undercut the IMF and the World Bank and just offer better terms. It's a really simple thing, and I have seen people call this like, this is Chinese imperialism. And I sometimes see people call things that I would just call diplomacy imperialism. And I feel like that's just not understanding what imperialism is. Offering better loans, often in return for favorable votes at UN and other economic things, that's just called business. Like, that's just normal shit. That's not imperialism.
Also, the loans have more favorable terms, but also if someone is struggling with repayment, IMF and World Bank will just fuck you over, and China is known to actually like work with people and like restructure loans so that they can be more easily repaid.
Yeah. I mean, and so that's where it's like, I again, as we all say, of course, I have my criticisms of China, but like, that's one of the best things they're doing right now. And by just simply undercutting the power of the IMF and the World Bank, that is a huge improvement for global geopolitics. Like, that is no small thing to be able to do that. So here you can see why those loans from the IMF and the World Bank are just so fucking bad. Like,
right. And like, if you for a second assume that okay, China is actually doing imperialism with these loans or whatever, then what the hell is the U.S. doing with the IMF? Like,
Yeah.
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 like if anything, it's that's real imperialism. If anything, I don't know. So in 2012, Park Geun-hye, the daughter of former dictator Park Chung-hee, was elected president of South Korea in with promises to rein in the chaebol, the big industrial conglomerates, from abusing workers or from being corrupt. She didn't actually do this. I'll go into that in a
I was
second.
about to say, like, well, we know that didn't work. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. The daughter of the former dictator didn't rein in the fascism? Wow. Shocking.
Yeah. But meanwhile, in 2015, a militant labor federation with a diverse membership spanning trucking, construction, auto workers, and public teachers organized a rally in Seoul, basically trying to march on the presidential residence. Um, they were protesting a plan to make the labor market more flexible by giving employers greater leeway in dismissing workers, and also against her decision for a government selected panel to write the high school history textbook.
oh, great.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish industrial workers in the U.S. would protest when Texas was, saying, or what was it? Florida was saying that, slaves had it good or something. I don't
That's
remember.
Florida, but I'm sure Texas has some school curriculum stuff going on as well. It's all about control of information, and when it comes to history specifically, there is no non-political way to tell history. There is
Oh yeah,
is no such thing as objective history. It doesn't exist. Get it out of your head. So like when some asshole tells you, oh, this and that about the USSR or whatever, again, take everything with a grain of salt because there is no objective history, and you have to look at the source of this information and the actual evidence that you have, which is often, unfortunately, less evidence than we would like to see.
yeah. So in 2016, President Park was impeached as a part of an influence peddling scandal involving bribes from several of the chaebol corporations.
Oh, big surprise.
Yeah. So not really reining them in, just taking bribes from them.
Which in the U.S. is just legal, so
Yeah.
that's why we don't have that scandal, is because it's just legal here.
Yeah, it's not bribery, it's lobbying. It's totally different. So she was sentenced to 24 years in prison in 2018 after being found guilty of abuse of power and coercion. This was raised to 25 years and a fine of 17 million US dollars following an appeal. But then her successor, President Moon, would go on to pardon her in 2021.
Boo! Goddamn.
Yeah. So that is where we are now, basically. Even in a liberal democracy where there are labor unions, there's free and fair elections, there's presidents going to jail, that just gets overturned, and you can still get put in jail for saying the wrong thing. So
Yeah,
cool democracy
and
you got there.
it's interesting in I think on Means TV there's a documentary I watched on, what was it, like, I forget the name of it. Maybe we'll link it in the show notes or something, but it was about a woman in South Korea talking about, like, she had an experience where she went to North Korea and just like spoke about it in a way that wasn't like pro North Korea necessarily, but it was just like, hey, I feel like they're not like the most evil place on earth like we've been told. And people in South Korea reacted to it so negatively that, like, she had constant death threats. In fact, was attempted to be like some maniac, like showed up to a talk she was doing and like tried to blow her up and like bombed the fucking place with innocent people there. And it's just like, it's all about propaganda and just like what you are allowed to think and like we think of like, and when I say we, I just mean the average American thinks of South Korea as like, oh, that's the free place, and North Korea is the place where you can't say anything. And the truth is, you say the wrong thing in South Korea and you will wind up in jail, or you will, someone might kill you because it's like you said something that isn't anti North Korea. Like, and it just goes to show that, like, when the bourgeoisie owns all the information that you have access to, it skews opinions. And, that's why sometimes you can't just, like, go by what does the majority of people think, because unfortunately, the majority of people can very easily be wrong. And also, I mean, just kudos to all the workers in South Korea who did rise up at that point back in the day. I think a lot of that militancy has unfortunately subsided, though, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 2015 protest movement against Park was the last big one they had there, but I believe I haven't kept up with South Korean politics lately, but I believe I heard that they are going in a more right-wing direction lately. So I don't know, maybe things will pick back up again. Maybe all the South Korean liberals are out to brunch right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And I guess I should say also for anyone listening that's like, why aren't you criticizing North Korea? Like, yeah, I mean, there's definitely valid critiques of North Korea. Like, can't think of any off the top of my head, but
Oh, but there's plenty. They get enough criticism is kind of the thing.
Yeah,
Like,
but I think it's just a good way to contrast North and South Korea. Like, it was the same country and just divided in half, and against the will of the people there, the U.S. and has run a social experiment. Like, what happens if half the country is developed along socialist lines and half is run on hyper-capitalist fascist lines. See what happens. And like, I think zooming out a little bit, you can kind of compare other similar countries, like let's say India and China, or Haiti and Cuba. Like,
yeah,
the socialist countries in many ways are doing a lot better than their neighbors. That were at a very similar developmental point when that division happened.
Yeah, indeed. I think one of the most important things that stood out about me, again, cannot recommend the Blowback podcast enough, but one of the things that like they pointed out was through like US military like intelligence briefings and stuff, they showed that like the US was keenly aware of the fact that like once they divided the country, war was inevitable because they couldn't reunify it without the entire peninsula becoming communist. So they pointed out that like there was a point where they looked at the possible elections and they're like, if we just try and stop the US occupation now and we just let Korea go back to being a united Korea, the communists would be in control of the entire country within 5 years. And
Yeah.
like it goes to show that like the North didn't have to be the like hermit kingdom that it is now, which we have forced it to be. Like the communists could have won democratically without any real resistance, and the U.S. knew that, and so their actions and their decisions to destroy the North were based on the fact that they knew that in a democratic contest, the communists would win, hands down.
Yeah. And I believe the same thing happened in Greece after World War II also.
Yeah.
The U.S. is basically like, we're not allowing communism to win here, so we're going to wreck your shit.
Yeah, I think that was some Operation Gladio shit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's amazing how effective it's been, too. Because, like, they beat down the communists into submission, extrajudicial murders, horrible military dictatorships, and yet somehow, through that, like, overt means, the people then eventually develop into fascists, like, overall. You know what I mean? Like, it is amazing how cartoonish it almost seems when how they, like, portray it in a dystopian novel. They're like, oh, well, this leader just tells people, war is peace over and over again, right? Like, they just beat it into you, and, like, apparently it fucking works. And that is a scary thought to me. that like
Right.
how effective it is, because the evil fucking fascists just say the same thing over and over again, and it works. And I don't understand that, but it does seem to be effective, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear plenty of people say in the United States, "Oh, it's just common sense," you know.
Yeah.
It's just. Well, that's all the notes I have. Anything to add before we wrap up here, guys?
I was just about to let you know that we should wrap up.
Hyundai's cool now. Well, anyway, on that note, I would just say, I'd just point out, Hyundai does make at least one cool car, although do they still make it? Oh, I better find this out now. But I think the Hyundai Genesis is kind of cool, or like, the Genesis Coupe, like the rear wheel
They do not
drive.
make that anymore.
They do not make it anymore?
No.
Okay, Hyundai sucks. Fuck Hyundai. That was a cool car. I mean, it's kind of wonky and weird and whatever, but like, they were cool. They were a decently cheap rear-wheel drive car, and they drift pretty decent. And I think they look good. So yeah. Anyway, had to make something about cars.
I was surprised that Kia is as old as it is. Like you mentioned them in one of the earlier protests, and I was under the impression they were like been around since the 90s or something.
No, I know they were around in the 80s. I don't remember I don't think they were in the US at that time though.
Oh, fair enough. Even 90s was the thing I was saying, so I didn't embarrass myself because I actually thought it was the 2000s.
Well, I think, it existed in Korea much earlier, and again, a lot of that stuff was centrally planned and propped up by the West and like from government loans, because of course capitalism, despite the old adage, capitalism does not breed innovation. It requires a lot of investment from elsewhere. So
I don't know. Look what it did for Kia. Now they have the 9 Inch Nails logo.
Oh, that's good. Well, anyway, on that note, I don't know if you like what we're doing, go ahead and give us hopefully a good rating on your podcast app, or come follow us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and someday Threads, maybe at some point. We'll get there.
Give us time.
And we're on Hexbear as well, which is the old Chapo chat something or other. I don't know.
Yeah,
we're all
and shoot us an email.
Yeah, there you go.
Shoot us an email, carsandcomrades@gmail.com.
Yeah, if you got wheels, Bryant, let them know.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Capitalism works, if it works at all, because it always has socialism to bail it out and to subsidize it.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
In the 1980s, 50 corporations controlled most news media in America. By 1992, that number shrunk to 24. And today, only 6 corporations control 90% of everything Americans see, hear, and read. The money spent on the Iraq War alone, which killed 1 million people, 5% of Iraq's entire population, and planted the seeds for ISIS to flourish, could have covered all global investments to halt climate change trends.